Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a science fiction suspense film, 2067. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In the future world, due to excessive deforestation, the last tree in the Amazon jungle has disappeared, and large areas of seaweed vanish, causing a sharp drop of oxygen in the air. The human civilization falls due to plant extinction and fatal respiratory disease. In the year 2067, the remaining human survivors live in an underground city where the oxygen level is low and becomes the most precious resource. The labor force is widely employed to produce oxygen. Even so, oxygen takes up only 3.3% of the air, far less than 21%, which is required to keep humans alive and healthy. As such, everyone needs to wear an oxygen mask all along to consume the synthetic oxygen, which is mainly produced by the Chronocorp Corporation, the largest synthetic oxygen supplier for the underground city. However, that kind of synthetic oxygen is tainted and will gradually cause a deadly disease known as sickness, which won't kill people immediately, but is chronic and incurable. People will spit blood once they get ill from that, and their lives will come to an end with no effective cure. The whole humanity will disappear sooner or later. As a result, the strong people fight for the decreasing oxygen, while the weak have no choice but to burn themselves to protest against the authorities' privileges in the use and allocation of oxygen. Instead of showing any sympathy for the dead, the administration condemns such irresponsible behaviors because their burning suicidal would waste more oxygen. Ethan works as a mechanic for the city's power plant. 20 years ago, his father left home and went missing, while his mother was killed. Ethan was raised by his brother, who's now his only family member. But Ethan has a girlfriend he's in deep love with. One day he gets home and brings an oxygen mask as a present to her. She puts on the mask, but starts spitting blood. Obviously, she gets ill due to the synthetic oxygen and may die soon. Later, Ethan and his brother are brought to the company CTO, who explains that the sickness will eventually wipe out humanity, and only Ethan can save the world. Ethan doesn't believe her smelly shit at first. Then the CTO leads him to their laboratory, where the fellows seem to be familiar to Ethan. It's revealed that Ethan's father, a quantum physicist, actually worked for Chronocorp. But the father keeps it a secret due to the confidentiality agreement. He devoted all his life to the scientific project. But later, he's missing, and no trace of him has been found since then. When they come to the center of the lab, the CTO shows Ethan a prototype time machine devised by Ethan's father. Through it, scientists ever received a message from the future, hundreds of years later. The message clearly shows send Ethan, and it puzzles the group a lot. But they're quite sure that humans in the future must have a way to overcome the sickness. In hopes of finding a cure for the sickness and preventing the extinction of humankind, they decide to send Ethan to the future world through the time machine. Aware of its high risks, Ethan refuses the mission at first, as he doesn't trust the Chronocorp, and perhaps he won't be able to come back. However, seeing his sick girlfriend lying on the bed helpless, he changes his mind and accepts the mission. In exchange, he's promised that his girlfriend will be saved first, once he returns with the cure. Equipped with a microcomputer capable of communication and navigation, Ethan then goes into the time machine. After surviving the traumatic time displacement, Ethan finds himself brought to a lush rainforest 407 years later. An explosion accidentally burns off his oxygen mask, but he is surprised to find that he can breathe without any mask on the future planet. Later, Ethan sees so many species there, and the forest full of giant trees, which seem to have a lifespan of several hundreds of years. Following the instruction of the microcomputer, Ethan comes to the entrance of a bunker, where there is a skeleton, wearing the same jumpsuit as his. He checks it carefully, and finds a bullet hole in its skull. He also finds a familiar rusty microcomputer device, the same as his current one. To his shock, the name tag beside even shows his name, Ethan. All of which indicate that the identity of the corpse is nobody else, but Ethan himself. He finds the rusty device still has some power left, so he turns it on to play the last recording, in which he hears the quarrel between his future self and someone unknown, and then a following gunshot. Because of that, he falls into horror and despair. Right then, the microcomputer detects a weak signal. Ethan follows it further, but only to find several broken containers. At night, Ethan happens to eat some poisonous berries, causing him to lose consciousness. After a while, Ethan wakes up to find himself taken care of by his brother, who traveled by the time machine to the future year to rescue Ethan, as he was informed from the biochemical readings that Ethan was in danger. They return to the entrance, and the skeleton remains there, which means Ethan will still die shortly. Later they search forward, and finds an entrance located on the other side. To their surprise, a scanner reaches out and scans Ethan's face. Then the door opens automatically. They pass through the door and walk to the end of the dark hall, where a computer identifies Ethan and shows him the next instruction. Confused though, Ethan presses enter, trying to activate the system. But he's then shocked by the DNA verification process. Shortly after the blood test, the system has been successfully activated. However, it turns out to be the exact Chronocorp laboratory, but in the future year of 407 years later, there is nothing else there but a still functioning time machine, which excites Ethan's brother greatly, because that means they're able to return to the past. But Ethan doesn't think so, for the dead body of his future self just reminds him that he will die sometime soon. Ethan checks the system log and finds a holographic recording made by his father, who explains that the time machine was originally designed to collect the oxygen data in the future planet, and then transmit it back to the past. However, when the father first started the time machine, he received a message asking him to send his son to the future. Despite his misgivings, he chose to do so, and made a DNA verification here for Ethan. But Ethan and his brother realize that the time machine won't be able to take them back, because its battery has almost depleted after 407 years. What's worse, the activation of the lab triggers a malfunction in its nuclear power core, threatening to unleash a nuclear explosion in just 4 hours, which means they have to find a way to fix the time machine and travel back before the explosion. Running out of time, they have to act quickly. Outside, they are surprised to find a ruined city covered with green plants, but inhabited with no humans, showing that Earth starts its self-recovery after human extinction. Human skeletons are scattered everywhere. Ethan gets to his girlfriend's house by his memory, but only to find her bones, making him fall into despair again. Ethan's brother tries to persuade him to go back to the past, as the cure against the sickness doesn't seem to exist even in the future world. The brother's words make Ethan suspicious. He then turns on the rusty microcomputer to play the recording once again, from which he recognizes his brother's voice, and it seems the brother is exactly the one who shot him. While the brother raises his gun at Ethan, he still denies strongly that he would shoot Ethan. In huge confusion though, Ethan decides to complete the mission first. Later, with joint efforts, they manage to repair the power core, and then return to the laboratory. Now the system works, and they should be able to return to the past. However, Ethan still finds his body remains behind a door at the same location, which implies that they haven't made any changes to the future. In order to figure out the truth, Ethan pulls out the battery of his current microcomputer and puts it onto the rusty one. In that way, he gets access to another video, in which Ethan is assured that his future self will be killed by his brother. His brother then confesses that there is no hope of changing the future, and he is trying to protect Ethan. Finding it hard to believe that, Ethan locks his brother up in a room, then plays back his father's holographic log from the day he died. He soon discovers a conversation between the Chronocorp CTO and his father. It's shown that Ethan's father wanted to save all mankind, but the CTO only intended to flee from the dying time, with some chosen few only. However, whichever plan they choose, someone must travel into the future and turn on the time machine. In order to stop the CTO with her plan, the father locks the time machine and sets Ethan's DNA as the verification key. In anger at what Ethan's father just did, the CTO killed him immediately. Ethan finally realizes that he has misunderstood his father, who didn't deliberately abandon the family. Knowing that, Ethan tries to shut down the laboratory, but the brother rushes to stop Ethan and tells him that he's tasked here by the CTO to ensure that Ethan is sent in time to repair the power failure. Once Ethan activates the time machine, he should kill Ethan. However, struggling in mind for a while, the guilt-ridden brother can't bear to kill Ethan, but kills himself instead. In rage and regret, Ethan is determined to fulfill his father's dying wish. Meanwhile, in the laboratory of the year 2067, the CTO, with a group of privileged chosen people, are waiting anxiously for the time machine to be activated. To their shock, however, the time machine sends back hundreds of extinct plants, along with a copy of the recorded murder of Ethan's father. Soon after, Ethan destroys the time machine, resulting in the collapse of the CTO's plan. In the end, the CTO is arrested due to her murder. The plants sent back to 2067 are cultivated to revitalize the planet. Ethan's girlfriend also receives a flower sent from him and understands his choice. While Ethan has to stay in the future world alone, he buries his brother and forgives him. A butterfly catches his attention and leads him again to the same entrance, where Ethan is happy to notice that the corpse of his future self has gone. He rushes to take a look at the world outside and feels relieved to see that the future world has finally been changed. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.